I'm a soldier for Christ. I'm a soldier for Christ. I'm a soldier. No, they'll never take us under, because we're bringing truth like thunder. Raining on your speakers like a ton of bricks. Hold the cross high, cause we're Catholics. Fight the good fight with the truth. Stand tall with the truth. I'm a warrior for Christ. I'm in love with the truth. Love God, save souls, slay error. Go stronger. Go stronger.
Holy hour of power. Two Catholics with a PhD in common sense. This is High Energy Catholic Radio. We're not right versus left. We are right versus wrong.
Amen, brother.
And we are on duty. Terry.
I'm reporting for duty, sir. And Jesse, I'm excited about this week. We got some great people being interviewed for us. Stephen Mosner, I think, on Wednesday. Steve Ray, and then John Horvath on Tuesday. Going to be a great day. This topic we're touching base on, Jeff.
Heavy hitters this week.
Yeah, people at the foot of the cross with Steve Ray. This is going to help people stay focused on Jesus Christ during this Lenten season that you have so much time on your hand. But Jess, before we get into that, I just want to ask you if you can read from the Gospel of today's Mass.
Holy Mass reading, Gospel of John, chapter 8, verses 1 through 11.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
Here we go. But when Jesus went to the Mount of Olives, early in the morning he came again to the temple. All the people came to him, and he sat down and taught them. Notice Jesus Christ, he spent a lot of time at the temple. He was a teacher. Did he go to rabbi school? Probably not. The Bible doesn't say. But since he's the Son of God, he knows everything. Verse 3. The scribes and the Pharisees, they went to rabbi school, okay? Mm-hmm. Brought a woman who had been caught in adultery and placed her in their midst. They said to him, Teacher, that means rabbi in Hebrew, by the way, teacher. This woman has been caught in the act of adultery. That's the violation of the 6th commandment, even the 9th commandment, by the way. That's the law. Verse 5, now in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such. What do you say about her? So that's one of the Mosaic laws. That's the penalty for sin. Verse 6, this they said to test him, that they might have some charge to bring against him. So what are they trying to do? This is what Dr. Scott Hahn calls the controversy dialogue. They're trying to pit Jesus against Moses, because all the Israelites know that Moses is the greatest prophet, Moses and Elijah. So if they can get this young Nazarene, son of Joseph and Mary, to speak out against the greatest prophet of the Old Testament, they can bring him up on charges, at least religious charges. So that's what they're trying to do. But Jesus isn't playing their game, our Lord. Look what it says. It says, Jesus bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground. Now, my comment, nobody knows what he wrote down. There are ancient writers, ancient commentators that say that Jesus probably wrote down the sins of the Pharisees and Sadducees that were there present. And that makes sense to me. So It says, verse 7, as they continued to ask him, he stood up and said to them, let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her. Verse 8, and once more he bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground. So I'm assuming he continued writing their sins, okay? Verse 9, but when they heard it, they went away one by one, beginning with the eldest, and Jesus was left alone with the woman standing before him. Jesus looked up and said to her, woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you? So notice, all the Pharisees started realizing this guy has played Socrates on us. He's answered our question with a question.
Exactly.
And his question indicts us as hypocrites and sinners. And so they all felt shame. They dropped their rocks and they walked away. And it says, woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you? She said, no one, Lord. And Jesus said, neither do I condemn you. Here's the kicker.
Yep.
This is real mercy.
It's the cash value here.
Mercy.
Yep.
He says, go and do not sin again.
Yep.
The gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Jesse, that end of the statement, at the end of the gospel, go from now on, do not sin anymore. You see, that's really, like you said, true mercy. I say that because sometimes we hear in the church that, well, it's don't worry about it. I mean, we're all sinners. don't, it happens. No, repent and believe in the gospel. This is what Christ taught. And I just think that it's beautiful that we're coming to that gospel reading today. Go ahead, Jeff.
And I'll tell you why this is so important is because some people think that they're beyond God's mercy. No, you're not.
Oh, no way.
No, you're not. Look, remember yesterday's psalm at Holy Mass, in Psalm 130, it says, out of the depths I cried to you, O Lord. Lord, hear my voice. Let your ears be attentive to my voice and supplication. Notice what it said, the psalmist is saying here.
Yeah.
Even in the deepest parts of your depression, the deepest parts of your soul, in the deepest parts of where you think your whole life is just turned upside down, it says if you cry out from the depths of your depression or darkness, the dark night of the soul, the dark night of the senses, if you cry to the Lord, he will hear you. That's the promise of Psalm 130. So don't ever think that, you know what, I've sinned so bad that there's no way God will hear me. Wrong. Psalm 130 just answered your question. It doesn't matter where you're at in life right now spiritually, notice if.
That's right.
If you cry out to the Lord, that's a sign of repentance, and call upon his name, God will pick you up from the worst darkness that you may be in right now. And then other people say they fall into this guilt. They're saying, there's no way God can forgive me. I've sinned so bad. There's no way God can forgive me. That yesterday's psalm.
That's right.
It answers it. If you, Lord, mark iniquities, that means sin. If you, Lord, mark iniquities, Lord, who can stand? But with you is forgiveness, that you may be revered. That woman caught in adultery, if Jesus was just judging her based on, you violate the sixth commandment? Okay, open the trap door. Hell, you're gone. Next. That's what the psalmist is saying. Yep. If God just marks us by our sins, we're all done. It says, who can stand? We're all done. We're all toast. But it says, but with you is forgiveness that you may be revered. How is there forgiveness? Repentance. That's what Jesus says. Go and sin no more. In today's gospel, he's calling this woman caught in adultery to repentance.
Well said, Jesse. Before we get Bishop Sheen into the room, I want to remind everybody, I said last week that we're building a church tower with a 1846-year-old bell that came out of a church in Mexico here at the Sacred Heart Chapel in Covina. I wanted to just remind people, since the 5th century, bells were used in churches. Now, we know we don't have the masses for us to call to people. They can't go to Mass right now. But I'm hoping next week, or in the next week and a half, we'll have our bell. So whenever the churches are opened again for people to come to Holy Mass, we're going to be ringing that bell. And we're also going to have it blessed. We actually are working on the bishop to bless the bell. And I just want to thank those who have given money to help support us. If you'd like to be a supporter of the bell that we have here at the Sacred Heart Chapel, call 877-526-215 or go online and just say, I want to support that bell. I think we need to ring the bell that we've forgotten about Christ's presence in the world. And also, don't forget, the devil hates church bells, that there's an effect on spiritual warfare when you ring the bells. Is that a fair statement, Jesse?
Yeah, Terry, because there's a special prayer blessed upon them.
That's right.
Which it's a prayer that drives evil spirits away. And also the bells, because they're used for the liturgy.
Yes. When
the bells are rung, it reminds demons of the consecration, which is the high point of the Mass, because demons are afraid of the incarnation, God becoming a man. And when the ringing of the bells, another incarnation occurs. God becomes a sacred meal. God takes the form of bread and wine. And so the bells summons that event. And so, it has a terrifying effect on demons because of the prayer prayed over the bells for consecration. And because, again, it reminds them of the consecration when God comes down to every single altar and becomes incarnate once again under the appearance of bread and wine.
Well said, Jesse, and that's why I put the bells here at the Sacred Heart Chapel for all of us to ring those bells. I mean, we are going to do that, and if you'd like to help us, go to virginmostpowerfulradio.org or call 877-526-215. Let's bring Bishop Sheen in. He's on a locomotive air train, and Bishop Sheen has something that's very appropriate for our culture today. It's on destiny. He says, modern man is uncertain of his destiny. He's always afraid of being thrown back to the nothingness from which he came. The result is dread. Much of the modern culture is directed to the suppression of that dread. Sleeping tablets, opiates, alcohol, constant search for pleasure, all these attempts to suppress this awful gnawing dread of nothingness. Jesse, if that doesn't fit us, this was written 60 years ago. That's our culture right now. And I want to thank Bishop Sheen for, pointing that out for us here in 2020. Jesse, our next guest is Steve Ray, CatholicConvert.com. Go to his website, and I want you folks to get some of his material there because it'll help you while you're waiting for your churches to get opened. Steve Ray has resources that are just fantastic. And he's going to talk about people at the foot of the cross. And check this out, 18 people. Now, I do the Stations of the Cross every day. In our stations, we have like 12 people in some of the images, and they're beautiful oil paintings. But Steve's going to talk about people at the foot of the cross that will help you understand during Lent the value of Jesus Christ dying on the cross. And just, it's about time. We need to be focused on Jesus Christ and not be too distracted by the world, the devil, and the flesh that we're dealing with right now. We need to really have this Lent, the best Lent ever. You probably have more time today for this Lent than any other time in your lifetime. So let's make the best of it.
Yeah.
Jess, go ahead.
Harry, the word COVIS, C-O-V-I-S, to me, it stands for Christ over virus, infection, and disease.
I like it.
That's my COVIS. Christ over virus, infection, and disease.
Well said, Jess. When we come back, Steve Ray, CatholicConvert.com, will be with us to talk about people at the foot of the cross. And this should help you for your Lenten season to really, really be ready for the Easter season. We'll have much more when we come back on the Terry and Jesse Show on Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
Leviticus 11:44 says, "Consecrate yourselves and be holy, because I am holy." St. Vincent Pallotti said, "You must be holy in the way God asks you to be holy." God does not ask you to be a Trappist monk or a hermit. He wants you to sanctify the world and your everyday life. May God show us the path to holiness and help us to follow it all the days of our life.
How does the baby move in your tummy? How does the baby eat? Can the baby hear me? How did the baby get in there?
Wow, a pregnancy can sure generate a lot of questions. But what's important is that a baby is a baby, inside and out of the womb. Not just after birth, but 9 months before, at conception.
That's right. Every baby is a miracle. Hello, my name is Marianne Koharski. I'm the director of Pro-Life Across America. If you know someone who is pregnant or in need of alternatives or assistance or would like to support the work of Pro-Life Across America, please visit our website at prolifeacrossamerica.org, or better yet, simply dial pound 250 on your cell phone and say the keyword pro-life. Pro-Life Across America is non-political and totally educational.
A baby's heart is beating 18 days from conception.
Pro-life across America, the Billboard people.
This is Terry Barber. I want to thank you for your support here at Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Here's an easy way to do it. If you're going to sell or buy a house, call Real Estate for Life, 877-543-3871, because they're going to get you a Christ-centered agent to purchase your home or to sell your home. And at the close of escrow, a portion of his commission goes right back to Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Call 877-543-3871. Thank you so much for your support.
Welcome back to the Terry and Jesse Show. To join the conversation, call 888-526-2151. Now, here's Terry and Jesse.
Rated PG, praise God. We've got one of our good friends back in studio. We actually got him in an undisclosed bunker somewhere
right.
in the Midwest.
Yep.
my buddy and friend Steve Ray, my brother in Christ. I'm going to tell you why something I really respect about Steve.
That's right.
There's a lot of converts that have come into the Catholic Church and reverts, and a lot of them are just, kind of happy to, hey, I'll just go back to my, parish, maybe teach RCIA and, maybe lead a little home Bible study. That's good. I'm glad they're doing that. But Steve Ray, he went for broke. He realized that he goes, you know what? Whatever time I have left on planet Earth, I'm going to go for broke. And Steve has one of the most powerful apostolates of any convert I know, because he's going right to the heart of the issue. He's taking people in tours, but specifically his home run, his grand slam is the Holy Land Tour, where Steve Ray takes you in the footsteps of Christ. And I'm telling you, I've been there with him. And Protestants that go, once they're done, they'll say, where do I sign up to be a Catholic? And Steve doesn't push anything. He's not like hard apologetics. He's just teaching what happened. And anybody with an open mind and that are semi-intelligent walks out of there saying, where can I sign up to be a Catholic? The Holy Land is completely Catholic. Steve, welcome to the show.
To be here with you two guys, two of my favorite guys.
Steve Ray, we're so happy. And before we begin talking about the people at the foot of the cross, I want to encourage people to go to your website, CatholicConvert.com. Can you just tell our listeners, you've got some specials that the people are at home where they have time, they can download or purchase some things. I really want them to do that. So could you tell us what you have there for us?
Well, sure. I put up a special for Lent. It's my full talk on the Stations of the Cross.
Good.
It's a powerful talk, I think. I go through each station. I also explain the history of the Stations of the Cross and how they began. I've walked them over 100 times in Jerusalem.
Wow.
And then I also talk about the medical, the historical, the biblical, the typological, all of these things so that you really feel like you understand what each one of those steps means in that cross and all the typology behind it, too. So I have that talk called Stations of the Cross and another talk called The Pain of the Crucifixion. And I did that. Tom Monahan heard it. He's the guy started Domino's Pizza and Ave Maria University, said it was probably the best talk he'd ever heard. And I demonstrate and explain what Jesus actually went through on the cross. I would take an hour to do that. And then I also have my book, Crossing the Tiber, and we have a special on those for $14 for all of them.
Great.
And I think that's without no shipping. I don't remember, but I think $14 for all three of those, and it gives people something to do while they're stuck at home.
Exactly. Well, thank you. Well, Steve, I asked you...
we got 3 segments, so we're going to have to rip through this.
Yeah, let's get it.
Right now, go walk us on Thursday night from the upper room all the way to where Jesus Christ is arrested and taken up to the steps of Caiaphas. You got about 6 or 7 minutes. Go, walk us through Thursday.
Well,
that's funny.
Well, the Thursday. You want me just to talk about what happened on Thursday?
Yeah, just Thursday. Well, just stick on Thursday right now.
The main thing that happened on Thursday is the upper room, and that's the beginning of it. It's actually 2 parts, but the upper room is amazing because this is where Jesus, he said, I have longed for this night. Nothing more important to Jesus than this night. Why? Because it's the nuptial meal. It's the meal which is going to be the source and summit of all of our worship. It's where the Lord comes together with his bride. It's like a nuptial meal, and he said, this is my body. And what he means by that, if you take it in nuptial marriage terms, is the groom gives himself fully to his bride, and then the bride takes him fully into herself, and there's fruit and there's life because of this interaction between the bride and the groom. It shows also how important the family is, Jesus and the church relating to husband and wife. But this is being consummated, in a sense, in the upper room, this meal which is going to be shared through all of eternity until we get to heaven especially. And so the upper room is also where the priesthood has begun and the Eucharist has begun. They're changing the Passover meal to become the Eucharist, which we know. And Jesus said, "This is my body." And I think of myself as being a Baptist again, you guys. And when Jesus said, "This is my body," I would have said, "Excuse me, Jesus, I think you made a mistake. We can all see that that's just bread, but you said it's your body." And I really think you ought to reword what you just said, because there's going to be a day where there's a billion Catholics going to think you really meant what you just said, that it's your body. And I can imagine myself saying that. But the important thing of why did Jesus say this is my body? Because this is a picture of the Passover. In Egypt, when the children of Israel came out of they had to go into their homes and they had to cook a lamb and they had to eat the Passover lamb and they had to eat all of it before they could leave. And Jesus is doing that. He's saying, I am the lamb. For example, I'll back up a bit. There was a problem with the upper room with Jesus because there was no lamb. We don't hear anything about a lamb, and we don't hear anything about a priest. You have to have a priest involved in the Passover meal. Oh, but we do. We have a lamb. Who is it? It's Jesus. We have a priest. Who is it? It's Jesus. So he's both the victim and the priest. And when he says, this is my body, he's referring back to the Passover meal. You had to eat the meat of the lamb before you get up and leave. And Jesus said, this is my body. I'm the lamb. You have to eat the meat of the lamb. And right after that in John 14, he says, let us get up and go from this place. Just like Moses, after they eat the meat of the lamb, they had to get up and go from this place across the Red Sea. And so the upper room on Holy Thursday prepares us for everything.
Wow.
Wow.
That's power. And Jesse, here's my point, Steve. You're helping us this Lent, whether they purchase some of your talks on your website at CatholicConvert.com, to really engage in a very powerful meditation on the passion and death of Christ. And to me, I think we have to stay focused on Jesus. Right now, there's a temptation to start looking at the news. Forget about the news this is so important. And Steve, you really have done a marvelous job on this. And we've still got like 6 minutes. Let's keep going, brother.
Yeah, an important reason why this about meditating on the passion.
Yeah.
Many of the great saints,
Saint Alphonsus,
like Saint Catherine of Siena, they said the fastest way to grow in holiness is to meditate often on the passion of the Christ. Saint Alphonsus Liguori.
Yep.
This is classic Catholic interior life spirituality 101. Meditate on the passion. Steve, go ahead. Walk us through to Jerusalem, to Gethsemane, and to the events of the agony, and to the arrest and the steps of Caiaphas' house.
Okay, it's really interesting when you understand the geography of it. I know we could talk for 2 hours on all of this, but about the Eucharist, by the way, we just talked about, I have a talk called Defending the Eucharist on my website.
I've heard it. It's great.
Walk through from Jerusalem. Now he's going to the Garden of Gethsemane, and it says, let us get up and go from this place. And as he's walking, if you know the geography of the route that he's taking, you'll understand why he talks and mentions certain things. For example, he said, I am the vine, you are the branches. And the reason he talks about that is because there's this beautiful backdrop. He's passing the temple, and on the temple were huge clusters of grapes the size of a man, made of gold. And the temple, the life of the temple was supposed to bring the people of Israel this great fruit as they partook of the temple in the presence of God, but they failed him over and over again. And Jesus said, I am the new temple. In other words, I will tear down the temple and raise it up again in 3 days. He meant his body. His body is the new temple. And if we abide in him, the new temple, we will bear great fruit. And they think of clusters of grapes because they're walking past that great image. And then in chapter 17, he prays the high priestly prayer to consecrate himself, to consecrate the 12 who are with him, and to consecrate all of those who will believe through their word, which is all of us. Jesus had each one of us in his mind when he prayed. People need to realize that when he prayed there at the temple in John 17 on his way to Gethsemane, he prayed for you individually because he is God. He could do that all as though you're the only person. He prayed for you 2,000 years ago in front of the temple before his passion. And it says he prayed, where does the high priest pray? In the temple, of course, that's why. So then he leaves, it says in John chapter 18, by the way, I also have a book on St. John's Gospel, 450 pages I wrote with all this kind of stuff in it. Jesus goes through past the temple, and he goes down with his disciples through the Kidron Valley. I can see it in my mind right now. And he goes up into the olive trees on the Mount of Olives. And there he is praying with his disciples, going to spend the night, but he knows what's going to happen. It says that the Romans come with a whole cohort. A cohort is 600 men. Now, I don't know that they brought all of them there, but it says that the centurion came with a cohort of men, which could have been up to 600 of them, to arrest Jesus. And in Mel Gibson's movie, we see that happen, and they take Jesus away. But I think that the Garden of Gethsemane is probably the most, I'll quit with this real quick. The Garden of Gethsemane was probably the most painful part of the Passion for Christ, because the crucifixion was a merciful crucifixion in a way. It was only 3 hours. Jesus was only on the cross 3 hours. hours, but there are records of the Romans keeping men alive on the cross for 10 days.
Wow.
Can you imagine being alive for 10 days on the cross? But Jesus only 3 hours. The real pain of the crucifixion, I think, took place at Gethsemane, because there's where he accepted the cup and all the sins of the world. Father, if anything, please, if I don't have to take this, but your will be done. And at that moment in the garden, all the sins of the world descended upon Jesus, and he became the sin bearer. He wasn't a sinner, but the second person of the Trinity, the holy, holy, holy one of God, took into his self all of the sins of the whole world, and he was ready now to go and die and expiate for those sins.
Powerful. Powerful. Go ahead, Jesse.
What about, take us into, you've got about 2 more minutes. Take us into the arrest and the holy steps at Caiaphas' house, the trial, the cistern overnight, if you can.
Well, one quick thing about this, too, about the Garden of Gethsemane, when I said about him taking all the sins of the world. We read in John chapter 3:14 that as Moses raised the serpent in the wilderness, so a Son of Man be raised up, for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son. You don't think of Jesus, a symbol of him being a serpent on a pole. Why in the world would that be a symbol of Jesus, a serpent on a pole, like in the wilderness? Because at that moment, Jesus took into himself the sting of the viper of Satan. He took in all the sin, and in a sense, he became the devil. He became sin. He became everything. He took it all into himself so that he could kill it on the cross. That's why that image is there, I think. Now, he gets arrested, and they take him back across the Kidron Valley very brutally, and they take him up to the top of Mount Zion. I can see it all in my mind right now. I've done it 180 times.
Wow.
And they take him up to Caiaphas' house on these stone steps, which is called part of the Roman road. They're the holy steps, and you can touch them today and see where Jesus walked and left his blood on those stones, and our pilgrims love to touch those stones because they know Jesus walked there and dripped his blood on those stones. And then he had a kangaroo court, and he was judged and tried by Caiaphas and Annas the high priest, and then he was put into a prison, which was a big cistern. A cistern is like a big jar carved in the rock. Like it's a big opening with just one hole at the top, and they have ditches, so when it rains, all the water goes through the ditches and goes down into the cistern, fills this underground tank up with water, so you have water during the dry season. But there also is a great prison, because when you lower someone down by ropes into that, there's no way in the world they can get out, because 20 feet up is that hole, and you can't climb. There's no way to get up there. This is how they put Jeremiah in one of those, Joseph in the book of Genesis. They put him in a cistern, and now Jesus is kept in a cistern over Holy Thursday night. And if you want to know what it was like, read Psalm 88 on Holy Thursday night.
Wow,
Psalm 88.
Steve Ray here with the Terry and Jesse Show. We got to take a quick break, Steve. Wow, you got much more to tell us about the crucifixion and death of Christ. We'll be back with much more on Virgin Most Powerful Radio. You're listening to the Terry and Jesse Show with Steve Ray. Help the Helpless, a Minnesota St. Paul nonprofit organization chaired by Father of Tyr and volunteers, is humbly asking you for your kind support to help the poor and the handicapped children in India and Ecuador. Through financial support from the Help of the Helpless benefactors, the children are provided with clothing, food, education, shelter, and the teachings of the Catholic Church. The mission is to help children thrive and become self-sufficient young adults leading productive lives. We also provide aid to poor families in Ecuador with food baskets, medicines, medical assistance, and help with funeral needs for the deceased. The work in India is done by Father Antonio's organization, St. Mary's. In Ecuador, the work is being done by the Servant Sisters of the Home of Mother. You can call us at 877-762-8857. To learn more, please visit our website, www.helpthehelpless.org. God bless you. This is Terry Barber. I want to thank you for supporting Virgin Most Powerful Radio. And here's an easy way to support us by going to smile.amazon.com and type in Catholic Resource Center or Virgin Most Powerful Radio. And when you log in your Amazon account and you purchase products, a portion of it will go right back in supporting Virgin Most Powerful Radio. And it doesn't cost you a dime. I want to thank you ahead of time because that supports us year-round. May God bless you and your family. This is Terry Barber. I want to thank you for your support here at Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Here's an easy way to do it. If you're going to sell or buy a house, call Real Estate for Life, 877-543-3871, because they're going to get you a Christ-centered agent to purchase your home or to sell your home. And at the close of escrow, a portion of his commission goes right back to Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Call 877-543-3871. Thank you so much for your support.
Welcome back to the Terry and Jesse Show. To join the conversation, call 888-526-2151. Now, here's Terry and Jesse.
Blue Collar Catholic Radio. We have the best Bible study
by far
going on right now of any Catholic outlet. It's with Steve Ray. This is a man that's not only read the scriptures hundreds of times, he's been to the actual places where Christ has died, Christ is risen, and Christ will come again, the Holy Land. Steve Ray, bar none, is the Holy Land expert in the Catholic Church. And in fact, he's connected, I know, he's connected with the best Israeli tour guides in the state of Israel. And we have him here. Steve, let's go on this segment. We got about 10 minutes. I want you to walk us through Friday. And there's several things that happen on Friday. It's we want to talk about Pilate and the Antonia Fortress, beginning with the Via Dolorosa. Then walk us to the stripping off of Jesus' clothes. Take us also through the crucifixion. There's a little bit of typology you want to take us through and some symbolism. Talk about how nature reacts. Take us to the where he was buried in the cave of a man named Joseph. Very interesting. And then I'll connect this with the Catholic liturgy. You got about 9 minutes, Steve Ray. Go.
So I was thinking I'd have at least 2 hours. That gives me a job. Just for people, if they want to see the closing of the Holy Sepulchre, I thought I'd mention this. I put up a video on my website, CatholicConvert.com. Scroll down a little bit, but they just closed the Holy Sepulchre because of the virus, and it was very sad. And I put up a movie of what it was like then and what it was like now being closed down. So CatholicConvert.com. It's only about 2 minutes long. Now, we're leaving Holy Thursday because Jesus is now in a pit under the ground, and read Psalm 88, and he could have called. This is a point where I like to stop and say, Jesse and Terry, because tomorrow all the torture is going to come, all of the blood and the guts and the accusations and things are going to happen tomorrow, Friday. And this is Holy Thursday. He has the whole night to himself, dangling with ropes down into a dark cistern. He's all beaten up and in shock. He's hungry, thirsty, no sleep, and he's all alone, pitch dark, and he's just hanging there for the whole night. And he could have called 12 legions of angels. At any moment, 72,000. That's a Roman number, the legions. 12 legions are 72,000 angels. He could have vaporized the Roman army, but he didn't do it, even though he knew what was going to happen because he loved us so much he went through with it all. He didn't have to. Now, he gets up early in the morning because the Romans know that it's probably going to be hot, so they get their work done early in the morning, and they also know the Sabbath is going to start around 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, because when the first star comes out for the Jews, the new day begins. That's when the new day starts. It's called the Sabbath is going to begin with the first star, and you got to get all of the stuff done and finished before Sabbath starts. So they're in a hurry. They get him up, pull him out of that cistern, and they walk him back down the same steps that we talked about a moment ago, and they take him early in the morning to the Antonia Fortress, which are 4 big towers, and Pilate only came to the Antonia Fortress during the Passover. He stayed out in Caesarea by the sea all the other times. We only came in here because this would get 2 million Jews would be coming to this Passover time, and so if there's ever going to be trouble, it's then, and we saw that there was trouble. So they arrived there. And then Pilate tries Jesus. And here's an interesting thing to know. If you're a good pitcher, I bet, Terry, you got a good arm. If you took a baseball, you could fling that thing a ways. If you stood at the place where Jesus was with Pilate at the Antonia Fortress, and you took a baseball and threw it as far as you could to the south, it would land at the temple. That's how close it is.
Wow.
And at the temple, the priests were certifying that the Passover lambs were without blemish. You couldn't bring a lamb that was blind. You couldn't bring one that had the mange. You couldn't bring one that had the back leg chewed off by a wolf. You had to bring a lamb that was perfect and blameless. And the priests were doing this. Sometimes they have records of 250,000 lambs in one Passover being certified and slaughtered for the Passover meal. So they're counting, okay, this one's good, send him off for the sacrifice. I find no blemish in this, send that lamb off to the sacrifice. At the same time, right where Jesse was standing when he threw that football, Pilate is trying Jesus. And he says, I find no fault in him. Send him off to the sacrifice. Jesus is the perfect Passover lamb without sin, blemish, or any crime. Pilate recognized that he has no blemish in him. Send him off to the sacrifice. Isn't that profound?
Yes.
That Jesus becomes our sacrifice, no blemish, the same time the other lambs were being certified. Well, then they take Jesus and they put a crown on his head. They put a purple robe on him, a crown of thorns. And I have a bald head like you do, Terry. Jesse's still lucky he's got hair. But us too.
Very little.
Have
He's
any,
thinning.
you know, if you bang your head or you go under a tree and you bang into a branch, it's really painful.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine taking the crown of thorns and they pounded it onto his head. They didn't just sit it there. They pounded it onto his head, and he now wears this crown of thorns with blood dripping into his eyes. They whip him and beat him like we saw in Mel Gibson's movie Without Mercy, and they mocked him. And they didn't make fun of everybody as the king of the Jews, but they said, oh, this is the king of the Jews. Okay, well, we're going to have some fun with him. And that's what they did. They played a game with him, and they beat him, and they whipped him and pushed him around. And then they took him out to be crucified after he was beaten mercilessly within an inch of his life. And they took him out on the Via Dolorosa. Now, the Via Dolorosa is the Stations of the Cross that we pray during this, and I could come back on sometime if you want to go through each one of those stations and talk about each one of those. They're very profound.
Oh, yeah.
We would need about 3 hours, but I know we can do that. And then they walking down the Via Dolorosa, Jesus is carrying his cross, and a man named Simon Cyrene, he just happens to be going to work that day. He's come in from North Africa, from Cyrene, which is in North Africa. I could just see him with his suit and his tie and his briefcase, and he's just on his way to work, trying to mind his own business, going to get the business meeting done and head back home. And all of a sudden, these Roman soldiers say, guess what, buddy, you're big enough, you get over here. I don't want to help. I got my new suit on. I don't want to get it all bloody and guts. Get over here. And they force him to carry Jesus' cross with him. Well, they get to Calvary, and all that Stations of the Cross is so profound, because if you think what Jesus is doing, it says that he fell 3 times in the stations, the Via Dolorosa we pray. It never says that in the Bible, but it is common sense. If you have a beam, it's called a patibulum. It's the cross beam, at least that on the back. Many think that the upright was always stationary at Calvary or Golgotha, and he only carried the cross beam, the patibula. It would have weighed 100 pounds or more. The historians say probably 100 pounds, 110 pounds, and his arms are tied to this thing, and when you're walking along the road and you trip and fall, you go face down. Now, if you and I fell right now, we would put our arms out to stop our fall so we wouldn't hit our face, but if our arms are back tied to a beam, then when we trip and fall, we're going to go down. The only thing that's going to stop our fall is our face. Mm-hmm. And that he fell 3 times. You can just imagine his face being mashed into the stones along the way, and that's why in the Shroud of Turin you see his nose is pushed over to one side, because he kept falling and mashing his face on the road. Well, he finally looks up and he sees Calvary. He's going through the gates of Jerusalem, and he falls the 3rd time, and he looks up and he sees that his mother also comes running to him. And like in Mel Gibson's movie, it's not in the Bible, but I think it's perfectly correct. He says, Mother, through the spit and the drool and the blood all over his face and the scabs and everything coming, he says, Mother, I make all things new. And she wants to help him. She wants to save him like she did when he was a little boy. When he'd fall on the road, she'd run to him and pick him up and comfort him, but now she can't do anything. They push her away, and they carry Jesus. He looks through the gates of Jerusalem, and he sees the hill of Golgotha there, and he knows his time has come. He knows exactly what's going to happen. Now, he's on the way there. We know that Abraham took his son up a mountain for a sacrifice. God says, take your son, your only son, whom you love. Doesn't that sound like for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son? Mm-hmm. Genesis 22 is preparing us for John 3:16, because God the Father is a Father who has an only begotten Son, and he's now going to take, Abraham has his only begotten Son, whom he loves. Abraham has to walk 3 days to Mount Moriah. Where's Mount Moriah? Mount Moriah is on the top of Jerusalem, the same place another father 2,000 years later, God the Father, brings his only begotten Son, whom he loves, to offer him as a sacrifice in the same place. And when Abraham and Isaac went there, it says that Isaac carried the wood of the sacrifice on his back. What was Jesus carrying? The wood of the sacrifice on his back. And when Abraham was stopped from killing his son, he saw a ram, a substitute sacrifice, with his head stuck in a thicket, a thorn bush. What was Jesus' head stuck in? A thorn bush. He was the real Lamb of God with his head stuck in a thorn bush. But he didn't get the knife pulled back. God the Father said to Abraham, "Stop, I now know you fear me," but with his own son, the execution went through. If you want to see all this played out, watch my movie on Abraham, where I actually take a real ram and throw him up on the altar, and it looks like I sacrificed him. I really didn't. There was no animals harmed in that movie, but it looks like I did out of my movie that I made on Abraham in Iraq and Turkey and Israel. But now Jesus is the Lamb of God with his head stuck in a thicket, carrying the wood of the sacrifice up, and they strip off his clothes. Am I talking too much?
No, I love it.
Keep up.
Keep it up. People are going to, let me just interrupt here. People can listen to this on the podcast. If it's more than they can handle, just go back to Virgin Most Powerful
out there
and send it to your friends and family. Continue. You got about a minute and a half for this segment, Steve. Go for it.
Okay, I got all this stuff on my website, too, and talks and everything at CatholicConvert.com. I hope you don't mind if I say
No, CatholicConvert.com. Say.
Now they take Jesus up there, and they put his robe back on. And when I was a little boy, I was always getting hurt. I had broken bones and stitches. None of my other brothers did. I was the crazy one. I was always and my mom would put a bandage over a bloody wound that I'd have almost every week or two. And then the next day she'd say, "We got to take it off and put a new one on." She'd go, "She's the best way just to rip it off quick." And "Ow, Mom, that hurts!" Just ripped it off. But just imagine Jesus with that robes on his back. His back is like hamburger. All of those serums and things, and they start to coagulate, and it gets sticky when you get a bloody mess. And the robe starts to stick to his whole back of that big open wound. And when they get there, they rip that robe right off his back again. Can you imagine the pain? All those wounds being opened up again, the cloth ripped from him off of his back.
Ouch.
And that is just, I love them in Mel Gibson's movie, because right when they're ripping that robe off his back, it flashes back to the upper room to Holy Thursday, when they bring a basket full of bread, and it's got cloth covering the bread. And right before Holy Communion, when he consecrates his body, the body and blood, he takes the cloth off the bread. That's what Mel Gibson is saying, that bread on the altar becomes the very body. They're taking the robe off of body of Christ, just like they did at Calvary. And then they nail him to the cross. They put the beam down, and now it's no longer ropes. Now they're going to nail him. And they put these big beams, big nails, big thick iron nails, and they slam them in with these sledgehammers. And they don't put it right in the palm, Terry and Jesse, because if you feel your palm, you could feel it. The nail would slide out with the pressure pulling in. I think they put it right in the wrist at the bottom of the palm. That's the meat.
We'll be right back.
We'll talk about
Absolutely.
We'll be right back.
In 1 Corinthians 13:13, St. Paul says, "So there abide faith, hope, and love, these three." According to St. Ignatius of Antioch, faith is the beginning and love is the end. And God is the two of them brought into unity. Then comes everything else that makes up a Christian. May God grant that we may attain all the virtues that make for authentic followers of His Son.
Attention VMPR listeners. We've talked at length about the attack on our youth through popular culture media, but what if I told you there was someone trying to make a difference? The newest novel, Britfield and the Lost Crown, by C.R. Stewart, is reaching schools across America and sharing Christian morals alongside great storytelling. What if I told you that this mission needs your help? To reach more children, Britfield and the Lost Crown need funding for their ongoing book tour. If you're interested in making a difference, if you're interested in buying the book, or are curious and want more information, go to BritfieldInstitute.org. That's BRITFIELD Institute.org. Or email media@britfield.com. Help open up the world of Britfield and the Lost Crown to people everywhere.
Buying or selling your home or your business property? This is Terry Barber. Real Estate for Life underwrites the Terry and Jesse Show. And they can connect you to one of 900 pro-life real estate agents around the world. And when they receive their referral fee, they will give 80% of it to a pro-life organization. Wow! That's 80%! realestateforlife.org, 877-LIFE-US1.
This is Dr. Scott Hahn, and you are listening to The Terry and Jesse Show.
To join the conversation, call 888-526-2151. Here's Terry and Jesse.
Walking through the footsteps of Christ with Steve Ray. We got one more segment. That's too bad. We can actually go for about a couple of hours on this. Steve, I'm going to let you pick it up from Friday. Make it connected to Saturday, the descent into Hades. Then try to bring us into Sunday within about 10 minutes into the resurrection and all the ramifications of that day. Steve,
and
go.
Steve, before you go, people can get lots of resources if they just tuned in to go to CatholicConvert.com. You've got hours and hours of material on this topic, so I want to encourage people to do that. Now you can go, Steve.
And I just posted today 2 talks are on special with my book, Crossing the Tiber, for $14. My talk, Stations of the Cross, for an hour, and The Pain of the Crucifixion for an hour. And you can get it at CatholicConvert.com. Real easy. We'll ship it to you right away.
Good.
But I would like to say now they raised him on the cross. I had mentioned right before we closed that the nails did not go through his palms because if you put the pressure of the body, the nails would just pull through the fingers. Sure. There's nothing to hold the nail in, but if you put it in the wrist, if you just feel your wrist, right above your in your palm, right above your wrist, there's a lot of bones that would hold it. But there's also the median nerve. That is the most painful nerve in the body, and also it's in your feet. And even during World War II, morphine would not cut that pain because it was so terrible if you got that pierced. That's right where the Romans did that, because they knew how to make a crucifixion all the more painful and awful. It was like a symphony of pain, the way I call it. Every part of his body was screaming. It was like every symphony, like a symphony, all the musical instruments, all the different nerves of pain was just racking his body from every direction. And then they raised him up on the cross, and then from that cross, he's hanging, and we've got to imagine that those nails, if you're hanging down on those nails with nothing to hold yourself up on your feet, then you could die in a matter of minutes because your diaphragm cannot go up and down. You'd suffocate. So a person without being able to raise himself up in a little seat or with on your feet, a little step on your feet, you would die within a matter of minutes of suffocation, which is why the Romans would also then prop you with your knees bent, nail your ankles in too, because then you have a way with your ankles, you can raise yourself up and catch your breath. So if you imagine Jesus, his back is sliding up and down on this rough piece of wood, nails in his hands. He has to go down, and he's hanging there on his nails on his hands, but it gets too painful, and he can't breathe, so he has to rise up with those nails in his feet. He uses the nails in his ankle to push his whole body up so that he could breathe. And it says that he says 7 short words. Well, why are they short words? Because it was just like he goes graze up on the nails on his feet. Oh, mother, your son, your mother. Oh, and he'd go back down to catch another breath. And then he'd raise back up and said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Oh, and he'd go back down to catch his breath again. And this went on for 3 hours. And even nature rebelled against this. I have another talk called People at the Foot of the Cross, all 17 different people and entities that were at the foot of the cross. And one of them, I talk about the good thief. Both of them were reviling Jesus. Both thieves were saying, hey, you save yourself, save us. And they were both after him, Matthew tells us. But then I think what happened, and St. Jerome tells us this, is that when the sun went dark and the rocks cracked and there was an earthquake, it was like nature was protesting against what they were doing to its own creator. And it just protested. And the centurion saw it, and he says, oh, my goodness, this must be the Son of God. And the good thief looked over, and he must have had a revelation from God, because he said, remember me in your kingdom. Well, what is he talking about, a kingdom? It doesn't look to me like Jesus is going to be a king anytime soon. When's he going to be a king? What are you talking about? A man hanging on the cross, whipped to death, and in a matter of hours is going to be buried in the ground. And this crazy thief says, remember me and take me into your kingdom? He must have had a revelation from God as to who this really was and what was really happening. And he didn't say, Lord, I'm accepting you as my personal Lord and Savior, and I'm asking you to come into my heart. You don't see any of those words there. He just says, remember me, Lord, and the Lord saw his heart and said, I'll remember you. You don't have to pray some sinner's prayer. This is not what, this is what I used to say when I was an evangelical Protestant. But anyway, so he's hanging on the cross for 3 hours, completely naked. I know people get mad at me in saying that. Oh, no, he had a covering. Mary would have never let him be naked on the cross. Well, Mary wasn't in charge. The Jews would have not let him. They were very modest. The Jews weren't in charge. The Romans were in charge. And the Romans crucified men completely naked because it was humiliating, total rating. The pain of the crucifixion was not just to be painful to the man hanging there, but it was to totally degrade him, to dehumanize him, to make him repulsive to everybody. So when they came out of the gates of Jerusalem, they'd see him hanging there and say, I'm never going to disobey the laws of Rome. I'm going to do everything Rome tells me to do. And the man on the cross, he's lost control of his bowels and his bladder. The vultures start coming, and the hawks and the crows, and they start picking the flesh off his meaty body, and he's screaming there. It is to totally make you degraded in front of your family and your friends. There he is hanging there for 3 hours like this. The Son of God, who was from the glory of heaven, he didn't have to do this. He didn't have to do this. He could have said, let those sinners die in their sin. They started it anyway. It's their own fault. He could have let it go, but he didn't. He loved us so much he came down to rectify it. And whereas Adam and Eve were in one garden at the tree of life, which brought about death, there's the new Adam and Eve are now in a new garden at the tree of death, which brings about life, the total reversal of that. Mary is there with Jesus because she's the new Eve. The first Eve was in a garden, and she tied the knot of sin, and the new Eve is in another garden, and she looses the knot. She unties the knot of sin. She's a participant in the redemption of Jesus Christ. John tells us, by the way, that Jesus is crucified and buried in a garden. Why? Because he wants you to know that the first garden, which brought about sin at a tree of life, is now being reversed by another Adam and Eve in a new garden, and they're at the tree of death, and it's bringing about life because Jesus is rewinding it like a video. It's like a video rewinding, and everything is being recapitulated, and he's starting a whole new humanity now. He loved us so much, and he created us. He said, it is very good. It was so very good that he didn't want it to be destroyed. He came back to redeem it and to start it over again for us. So finally, he ends up dying on the cross, the pain of the crucifixion. Adam's side was, when Adam was in the garden, he didn't have a bride, so God put him to sleep in the garden, cut open his side, took out a part of his body, and created a bride. Now, we're in a new garden with a new Adam, and God has his new Adam in a new garden and said, my Adam needs a bride. So he puts Jesus to death on a cross. He cuts open his side with a lance. He takes part of his body out, the blood and water, which represents baptism and Eucharist, and he fashions from the part that comes out of Jesus' body, from his side, from his ribs, he fashions a new bride, which is the church. Jesus wakes up on the resurrection, and he loves his bride, just like Adam woke up from his sleep and loved his bride, Eve. Can you imagine? Seeing Eve? He must have just about died. Oh, she's so beautiful. And that's, Jesus looks at his church and has the same love for us. We may not think we're so lovely, Terry and Jesse. We may think that we have lots of problems, but be very careful before you criticize the church, because the church is the bride of Christ, and he is passionately in love with his bride. He loves us enough to let the Romans kill him for us. So, you want me to go on? Do we have time?
We got 3 minutes. Hit it. Well, I'm loving it.
3 minutes.
Yep. Okay, it says that when Jesus died, that the temple of the curtain of the temple was split from top to bottom. Now, it was that curtain, by the way. Don't think of it as like the curtain in your living room you're looking out right now. This curtain was 4 inches thick. It was a thick curtain, and it was multi-stories high. And it kept you away from God. God was in the Holy of Holies. We were outside, and the Gentiles had it even worse. We couldn't even come into the temple. We're way, way out on the outside. And Paul says, apart from God, without God, and without hope in the world, we're toast. But what happened when Jesus died, that curtain was ripped from the top to the bottom, and that's significant, because if it was from the bottom to the top, it could mean men did it. But if it's torn from the top to the bottom, that says God did it. And he opened that up so that through the death of Christ, we have access into the very presence of God, and we have no idea how special that is unless we have a Jewish background or we understand Jewish things, because the temple, even the Jews could not go into the Holy of Holies. But anyway, I'm getting off track here. So they took him down. And the one that everybody sees of Jesus being taken down from the cross with Mary holding him is called the Pietà, which Michelangelo did, and we show it to our groups when we take them to Rome. It's the first thing you see in St. Peter's when you come into the right. And that beautiful Pietà is Mary taking her son and holding him after the crucifixion. And Mary looks young because it says that it was a self-image of Michelangelo's mother, but also Mary, that's saying about her Immaculate Conception, still young and beautiful. But if you notice what that was the Pietà was made to be an altar piece. It was right above the altar. So it's a picture of Mary laying her son on the altar for us. His death at the cross, his death is being now represented at the altar in the Eucharist. And you see Mary laying her son down on the altar to become our sacrifice again every time we celebrate Mass. They took him down. It says in Matthew that a whole bunch of other dead people came alive out of the tombs and walked around. I have no idea what that's about, but it sure is interesting.
Yeah.
Well, then Joseph, a man named Joseph, found a cave for Jesus to be born in, and now a man named Joseph finds a cave for Jesus to be buried in, Joseph of Arimathea. And I know that he's a very strong man because it said he was bringing 100 pounds of aloes and herbs to wrap Jesus in. And I'm convinced that Mary wrapped him in the shroud. She wrapped him in the swaddling clothes in the manger, and she wrapped him in the shroud at the end of his life.
Makes sense.
And those who have studied the shroud say it was so perfectly placed against the face and the body, so nicely tucked. Only a mother could have done that.
Well said.
We running out of time?
Yeah, Steve, let me just mention to people your website, CatholicConvert.com. Refresh us on those who just tuned in, what can they get on your website? Because I really want to send people there.
If they want to go deeper into all of this, Steve, how do they do that?
Well, right on my blog today, just scroll down a post or two. I have a talk about Stations of the Cross, and my talk about the pain of the crucifixion, a lot of what I'm talking about right now, an hour each. And then you get also a copy of my book, Crossing the Tiber. It's a special for $14. Excellent. But I have talks on the Eucharist. I've got over 40 talks available on my website and lots of books and hundreds of free documents on the resources page. I got a lot of fun stuff. And if you want to take a virtual pilgrimage, go to my pilgrimage site. You can join us on pilgrimages all the way back 10 years.
Wow. And when the coronavirus ends, Steve, you'll be back getting people to the Holy Land and all over the world to share the gospel.
You'll be back on duty, right?
Correct?
I'll be the first one back to Israel when it's open.
You got it. Steve Ray, CatholicConvert.com. Thanks so much. We're going to have you during Holy Week. I'm going to be following up on that, brother. I hope you can join us again here at the Terry and Jesse Show. Thanks, Steve. God love you.
Okay.
You got it. Wow.
Terry, one more time, I just want to pray for Commander Carnicle, Phoenix police officer, was slain last night.
Oh, no.
Eternal rest granted Commander Carnicle, O Lord. And let your light shine upon him.
May he rest.
May the soul of Commander Carnicle, through the mercy of God, rest in peace. Amen.
Wow.
God bless our first responders. God protect them and keep them safe. Terry.
Amen. What state we should be living in? The state of grace, folks. What state shouldn't we be living in? State of mortal sin. If you haven't been to confession and you can still get there, make that effort. We come back tomorrow. We've got another special guest. I hope you enjoyed Steve Ray. Tomorrow, John Horvath will be with us. God love you.
St. Faustina's Prayer for Priests. O my Jesus, I beg thee on behalf of the whole Church, grant it love and the light of thy Spirit, and give power to the words of priests, so that hardened hearts might be brought to repentance, and return to thee, O Lord. Lord, give us holy priests. Thou thyself maintain them in holiness. O divine and great high priest, may the power of thy mercy accompany them everywhere, and protect them from the devil's traps and snares, which are continually being set for the souls of priests. May the power of thy mercy, O Lord, shatter and bring to naught all that might tarnish the sanctity of priests. For thou canst do all things. Amen. Virgin most powerful, pray for us.